What's up, everybody? I'm Reverend Nia.
I'm Minister Wallace.
My name is Reverend Tiff, and welcome to Millennial Conversations.
Millennial Conversations is a Bible study specifically for young adults where we teach through dialogue and have candid conversations from an emerging generation of leaders.
Be sure to repost and share with the hashtag RTMC. That means Read Temple Millennial Conversations. And don't forget to engage with us in the chat.
You can tune in to our Read Temple website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel every Thursday at 7 p.m. So grab your pens,
grab your notebooks,
and join us for tonight's rap session.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Millennial Conversations. We are so excited to have you here. We are closing out the month of September with the topic Prayer Saved My Life. As you all know, we started out this series on prayer with praying for the school year and things of that nature. So make sure you go back and you watch it. It is so good, super powerful. Tonight we are joined with Reverend Chrissy Belton. How are you?
Once again, thank you for being with us.
She was here last week with us as well. And you all know Reverend Dillard. And you all know who I am, I think. I hope so. I don't know. Anyway, we are so excited to have you all here. Please remember to like, repost, and share to your networks. Also, if you have not, please go back and invite 5 people or 10 people or whomever. Just make sure that you are tuned in as well as your network. And so we are going to jump right on into our scripture.
All right. So we're coming from Jonah chapter 2, verses 7 to 10. And it reads, "As my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols forsake their true loyalty, but I, with a voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will pay. Deliverance belongs to the Lord." Then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it spewed Jonah out upon the dry land.
Thank you. So first, before we jump into our questions, I encourage you all to actually read that entire prayer.
Love it.
It is very, very, very common. One of those prayers where it's the drama and the effects. And we've talked about that before a few weeks ago. So the first question, Reverend Dillard, I'm kicking this to you, is let's talk about, maybe this is not a question. Let's talk about how Jonah's disobedience led him to praying a life-saving prayer.
Sure thing. So it's never easy, and I think we all can attest to the fact that it's never easy to get a directive or instructions from God to carry out, with all of us being preachers, women of the gospel. Hey. It's hard to get these directives, instructions. God says to do this. And when we sometimes feel incapable, sometimes when we feel unworthy, sometimes when we feel like we just don't want to do it, let's just call a spade, right? We shy away from it. And in Jonah's case, that's exactly what he did. Exactly. God gave him instructions to go to a town of Nineveh, to give them a message like, listen, y'all been ratchet, y'all been trifling. God is sick of all of y'all.
Tired. Y'all been doing all the things.
He is tired and he's sick of all of y'all. So either you get it together or this is what's going to happen. Jonah flat out was just like, nah, bro, I ain't finna do that. And so he basically ran away from his calling.
Right.
And then that's exactly what he did. And so his disobedience caused then a storm to brew, basically, on the ship that he decided to steal away on. And he knew he was the reason why the storm came about. And so the people that he was on the boat with said, listen, throw him overboard. In fact, that's what Jonah said himself. He said, listen, y'all just throw me overboard.
It's me. I'm the one.
Just throw me overboard and let's just get this over with. It's my fault. I'm on your boat. I ain't even supposed to be on your boat. But because I ain't want to do what the Lord said do, I'm on your boat. And so the Lord now was mad at me. And so he caused a storm for all of us because I don't want to do what the Lord said do. That'll preach to somebody later on. So now everybody else is impacted because I didn't want to obey. And so as a result of him being thrown over the boat, he was swallowed by a big fish. While in that fish, he prayed this prayer. And it was this prayer that he prayed that saved his life.
Over the boat.
Thank you for coming to my TED.
Over the boat. Chrissy, Rev, you have anything to add?
Nah, not really, because it was all that. I mean, it's that, how many times when we don't do what we're supposed to do, we realize, we knew we weren't supposed to do what we did anyways. We disobey, and then we're like, God, I'm sorry. And it just leads you to a place of, because God put you in your place. And in Jonah's case, his place was in a big fish. And then it makes you be like, all right, God, you know what? Salvation belongs to you. I'll do what I have said I'll do. Deliverance belongs to you. It brings you to a place of humanity, when things happen. Because really, prayer is just talking to God anyway, I completely agree with everything Nia said,
I do too.
I'm about to say, I said nothing, right?
What can you add to that? I mean, she gave all the background and context of how he got there. It's a synopsis. That's exactly what happened. And it should be a lesson to all of us about where disobedience can lead us, especially when God is giving us directives, and not all the time will God always be so gracious. And even in this, you might not consider this to be gracious, but the fact of the matter is he did not stay in the whale, right?
Yep. And he had a whale and he had a big fish that was the place that God had for him. You know what I mean? So a lot of things could have happened to Jonah out there. He could have died after they threw him overboard, but God was gracious in that the fish swallowed him up, So sometimes our disobedience, God is still showing us grace and mercy. You know what I mean? The big fish was Jonah's grace and mercy from the Lord, saying, you know what? You deserve a lot more than what I'm about to give you, but I'm gonna let this happen for you. And in that place, you're going to come to a place of prayer.
Absolutely.
I think it's also important that we note that our obedience, what God told Chrissy to do, what God told Tiffany to do, what God told Nia to do, somebody else's life depends on it.
Yep.
And so by him being disobedient, it put him in a position with people he never met before on the boat. But then their lives then depended upon the fact that he was disobedient, right? And they didn't believe the way he believed. And it says that in the text in chapter 1. They didn't believe the way he believed. He was like, they even said, listen, it must be your God that brought this, because the one that we mess with, he wouldn't have done nothing like this. So it must be you. You must be the problem.
You the issue.
Right? And so I think it's also important that we note that it's not always easy to follow God's calling on our lives, but that we have to keep in mind that it's not just our call for us. And that there's something that God called us specifically for other people that has absolutely nothing to do with us. So our level of obedience could mean the difference. Again, as we talked about last week, could mean the difference of life and death for somebody else.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love it.
And so
let's tonight.
So let's talk about what running away from your calling is really about.
Babe.
And I'm gonna kick it to you first.
You would, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to share. You know, she started
She's an
first.
equal opportunity employee.
I'm trying to spread the
What
wealth.
is it about?
Everybody got to go first. Go ahead.
What I think it's about a lot of things. So, Jonah, I feel like his thing was, and we found out later, he didn't agree with what God was calling him to do. And so, because I really don't want to do what you're telling me to do, because I don't think they deserve your grace and mercy. I don't think they deserve, so God had a whole conversation with him in chapter 4, but, sometimes it's like you run because you don't agree, not necessarily not with God, but I don't agree with using me. Like, why are you using me, right? You feel inadequate, and some of that inadequacy comes from comparison, right? It comes from, because I grew up in a family of preachers, so it's like, I can't do it like them, I can't do it like them, I can't do, so it's like, nah, I'ma just chill, I'ma just chill. Like, for a minute, and we were talking about this earlier, I was like, they called me Jonah, because I was like, nope, everybody else was accepting their call around me, and I was chilling, like, nope, don't wanna do it, because you're comparing yourself when really it's not about that. And so you're saying you don't believe God because it's not about you, it's about God. And whatever God's trying to accomplish in the earth, he chooses you. Right. You're the vessel. It has nothing to do with your agenda, it's God's agenda, right? And so you run when you're scared, you're scared, you're nervous, there's so much that goes into it, but I'm gonna stop right there, yeah.
Right, and sometimes it's an identity issue too. Like, that's what it sounded like, it's rooted in when we talk about identity. You have anything to add?
I think that, I can only speak for me because I ran from my calling for a long time, a very long time. So I knew at 8 years old I was supposed to be a preacher, and I didn't really accept that thing until I was like a teenager.
Well, 8 is interesting age to accept that.
Yeah.
And so I knew at 8, but I was like, no, thank you. Then I fully accepted it at 16, and then told the pastor of the church, and he told me no, I wasn't. Wasn't my grandfather though, but another person said, no, you weren't. And I could have took that at face value, but I was like, yeah, whatever. And I'm still saying, yeah, whatever. Let's be clear. But for me, it was all of that.
Yeah.
Everything that came out, inadequacy, I ain't nobody to be preaching, nobody's nothing. Yeah. But I think also, in addition to the fear and the anxiety that came along with it, was looking at what he showed me and saying, there's no way
from here to
I can possibly do that, right? And so for me, the running from the calling was about feeling like I was inadequate to do such a big thing.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't look at it like it was small. Standing up in front of people, I was like, no, who does that willingly? Like, no, absolutely not. But it was like, there's no way somebody like me can do something so big. And so even when I look at Jonah's stories, like, you literally are going to a town where nobody know you. And you're basically going to tell them that they're wrong.
Right, right.
That the way they've been living is wrong.
Right.
That God don't like the way that they've been adjusting them. Like, who am I to tell you the way an outsider, somebody you don't know from a can of paint, is telling you, like, no, God is not pleased with your life. What? Like, who are you? Right?
Where'd you come from?
Exactly.
Like, you wasn't here with us the whole time. Now here you come out of the blue.
Who is you?
And so when I look at the fact that he ran away, I'm like, that's why you ran away too. Like, you would have thought that you were a nobody being sent to do something that only somebodies do.
Right.
No,
well, for me, to be honest, I just wanted to do my own thing.
Then there's that.
The allure of preaching, there was no allure to preaching at all. There's really, like, I'm always confused by people who are just so excited.
Right.
I'm like, what? Because what it really was for me was knowing the weight of it. And I didn't want to be I didn't want nobody's blood on my hands. I didn't want to be responsible for anybody's soul. Meanwhile, I'm in a career where I'm responsible for somebody. They just happen to be on the younger.
We don't think about it. Yeah,
right.
God's already called you.
Right, and that's the crazy part, right? God already called you. And meanwhile, I was just like, but I'm still responsible for people's children. So I'm still responsible for a human. But even with that wasn't my initial plan. Like, I had a whole plan of what I wanted to do. And just preaching and ministry just wasn't it.
It was not.
And nothing about preaching to me. The way I have grown up learning about ministry is about the sacrifice of it all.
Yep.
Right? That it's not it's not a glamorous thing.
No.
That's why I get so frustrated.
Hey, baby.
But
Listen.
it's a different, we're not going to even go there. But what I'm saying is, you know, it never was like, ooh, I'm gonna wake up and be a preacher. Oh my God, I want to do this.
No.
It was like, you want me to do what, Lord? And I literally told God, I was all right, I'm gonna do it when I'm like 67.
Child, the whole way through seminary, I asked monthly, God, you sure?
This is what you wanted for my life?
67.
I'm serious. After I done lived my life, did what I wanted to do, I said, then I commit, because at that point,
67,
at that point, I done did what I wanted to do.
Past retirement age.
Past retirement, right. Like, and then meanwhile, the Lord was like, that's cute. Process starts at the age of 25. Whoa.
Wait a minute.
Life. Woo. Anyway.
Yeah. So much. Goodness. Oof.
I could go on for days.
Yeah.
But to the last question, do we think God responded because of what Jonah prayed or how Jonah prayed? And I'm going to let anybody start. You know, you see how that worked? You
That
went
was
first,
so
you go
nice.
next. Anybody go when they want to. Go ahead.
I don't know if it was what Jonah prayed or how he prayed, but I feel like God responded because he prayed. Period.
Preach.
Because Jonah prayed. Because sometimes God is just waiting for you to acknowledge him in your situation. And so it was because Jonah stopped being crazy, stopped doing his own thing, and finally paused and prayed.
It's because God didn't give him a choice but to stop. He was in the belly of the fish.
The position will cause you to pray, right?
Yes,
the
it
place
will.
that God puts you in, sometimes you have it's no other choice, right? And that's sometimes the purpose of the places God sends us and puts us in is for us to pray because ain't nothing else going on in the belly of a fish.
Where you gonna go?
But yeah, and so I think I don't think it was, because sometimes we're so like, we try to think, well, I don't, a lot of times when people are asked to pray for a service or something, I'm not that good at praying. It's just talking to God, right? It's not special formula to it. But for me, I believe that God responded because Jonah decided to stop being crazy and to pray. God responds, and so for me, it shows that God responds to prayer. He responds to prayer. You don't have to be that Reverend Doctor this and Elder that. You don't have to be any of that. When you pray, God responds. That's what it took for me, is that when you pray, when you decide to pray, God responds. So for me, I don't know if it was the how or the where or anything, but I think it was the fact that he prayed.
Right.
God said, all right,
Right.
I'm gonna spew you out. Come on, let's do what I called you to do.
Now that you got there.
Now that you got there, let's go do this. Let's stop playing.
I think it was both of them. I think it was the what he prayed, but I think it was also how he prayed. When you look at as my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord. Like, I feel like he came from a place of humility, but also a place of repentance.
Accountability.
And I think that repentance factor, like, a contrite spirit, what is that verse? A contrite spirit and a pure heart, the Lord does not despise, right? And so I feel like God honored his repentant heart. He honored his humility. Like, he was like, listen, as my life is literally leaving me, I'm fitting to die. If I'm going to die, I might as well tell the Lord I'm sorry. If I'm going to die, I might as well just say, Lord, I should have obeyed the first time. I get it. Now I'm in this smelly fish. He done ate God knows what, and I'm just in here. And it's like, he's literally at a point, I love it. I love how God works. He's literally, again, just like the widow woman was, at a point of no return. This is his turning point.
That's it.
Right? The turning point that says, I'm fully aware of what I did. And in this case, what I didn't do. What I chose not to do.
Full decision.
But I remembered the one who sent me. And the one who sent me is the one that I have to go back to now, since he sent me to do something that I never carried out. I had no intention of carrying it out. But now that I'm in this particular position, like you said, in terms of where he was, where he was positioned, changed his posture. And so his heart posture changed to the point where he's like, listen, God, I remembered you. Listen, I know what the other people, they worship their vain idols. They do that. They are idolaters. They did this, that, and the third. But listen, deliverance belongs to the people because everything belongs to you. Listen, and it was in that moment when God said, all right, spit him out the fish, heard his prayer. I think that's what the text says. The Lord spoke to the fish and spewed Jonah out onto dry land. But I believe it was because of what he prayed and how he prayed. Because it's one thing to say a prayer just to say it like it's real surface level. But when you're in a position where you stuck between a rock and a hard place, or your back is against the wall, we don't got time for no surface dilly-dallying type of prayers.
Right.
No, you want the Lord to hear the sentiments of your heart. And I think God also responds to sincerity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And also, it was a transformative experience for Jonah's character. You have to carry some sort of arrogance to really be telling God,
nope.
Nah. And we really have to, and it's the accountability. Back to talking about the humility, it's the accountability piece, right? I agree with both of you, but I'm just adding on to it.
Of course.
That you had to have some sort of arrogance to yourself to just be looking at the Lord and be like, I know what you said to do.
I'm going to go over here.
And I'm going to go over here anyway. And it's the fact that he ran away.
It's crazy.
He ran away.
Physically.
Like
Where did you think he was going to go?
In my mind, I was like, the all-knowing,
Where is you
everywhere,
going?
omnipotent,
Where is you going?
all present,
you going?
all-knowing God. The you know,
I cannot hide from God. Where is you going?
the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, and you was going.
If I get in this boat, he ain't going.
And the crazy, but you know what it was? Now that we're talking through it a little bit more, you know what it was? Yeah. I think that sometimes we run away from places thinking that it's going to shift what God said.
Right.
Doesn't.
Right. And it does not.
It does
because
not.
the Lord just going to call you back. Eventually, you're going to have to call.
Tap, tap.
Hey, woohoo. And not only that, God is so powerful. Yeah, I could do here what I told you to do there.
Yeah.
Right? So it was also a character transformation. Yeah. And some of us, if we're honest, we need really rough circumstances to really get the transformative power, to get the transformation that God so desires for us. But the beautiful thing about this text is that it wasn't God that put Jonah in that situation.
Yeah.
Or are we okay? So
I just want to play devil's advocate for 2.2
no,
seconds
ahead,
because of that.
But I'm talking about Jonah's insistence to run. Not saying,
yeah,
God didn't make Jonah run.
No, but I also believe still in Romans 8:28 that all things work together, right? And so I believe that even though he ran, God still used that to turn it for the good. And so even with the storm coming, I believe that God caused that storm necessarily, like he knew that it was necessary, because had he not run, had he not come across those people who did not believe in God, which come to find out they started to believe in God after the storm came. Hello. And then had he not been thrown over, he would have never gotten to that place of humility. He would have never gotten to that repentant place to then offer the prayer. Right. And so I agree, no, God did not cause him to run. But at the same token, God still used the running to turn out in Jonah's favor. Because by the time he got to this prayer that saved his life, he's basically like, realizing God was with me, but I wasn't with God.
Right.
What if God used this? Because sometimes we don't know, we have blind spots about our own selves. So what if God used this to get some things out of Jonah that was not, helpful for his calling? What if God used this to peel away some things, to cause him to come to a place of humility, to say, you know what, I was carrying out my call all kinds of wrong and all kinds of ratchet. And so this moment is not even just about, going back to Nineveh and doing what you said, but now it's about getting out of me things that were not good for what you were calling me to do.
Just a sidebar, everyone. We're stepping into seminary territory. We are dancing with theological concepts and understandings.
I don't know what that
right? Because we're talking about now we're moving into the power of will and how that works in God's ultimate plan and how God's work and will still comes to fruition even when we decide that our will
is going to be something else.
Is going to be something else. Like it's Lord have mercy.
Go forth.
I don't know if we have enough time to really dive into all that.
Dive into it.
But we will dive.
We will.
We will dive.
We're talking about a situation that we don't know. So I always go to, we often don't know the full, we weren't there.
Right, of course.
And so I often read this text, I'm like, well, how often was Jonah running
Right.
Because he just pops up on the scene and they start talking about him.
Right, is this the first time? Was he known to be a runner? Right, exactly. And so
Jonah was in the Olympics.
He was not. He's a runner.
And this is his
He was
full
running
time
for his
in.
life in a different kinds of way.
Right. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us this Thursday. This is what happens in seminary classrooms too. We start
all the time
throwing concepts together, making it make sense. But if you are someone who is watching and you resonate with the story of Jonah, and if you are someone who resonates with the story of Jonah and you're not saved and you were trying to figure out what was happening and what was going on with you, and something here resonated with you, feel free to put in the chat, it is me. If you are someone who is still like Jonah, you are saved though. The difference is you're saved, and you've just been running. And eventually you get tired. And eventually you're tired. And you're probably tired right now. If that is you, please say it is me so we can offer you some prayers. And if you are someone who was a part of a church and started running, and you are running from church to church looking for a church home, Reed Temple would love to have you. And so you can put in the chat, it is also me. Make sure you specify which call you are a part of so that the right information can get to you. But please know that we are praying with and for you. Also, if you enjoy Millennial Conversations, and if you enjoy everything else that Reed Temple is producing, please partner with us. And you can do that. I don't know why I'm losing my words. Please partner with us by giving your tithes and your offerings, by following the information on the screen, whether it's the phone number or the website. Please feel free to do so and do that. And if you want to connect with us further, you can do so at reedtemple.org/cares. And we would surely get back to you on the next steps. Thank you again for joining us as we close out on Prayer Saved My Life. I encourage you to go back and to rewatch previous episodes, and that you continue to, if there's any series of episodes that we've done, definitely hit on the one on prayer. Thank you again. Don't forget to invite your entire network, 5 to 10 people, share, like, repost, and we will see you back next week for another episode of Millennial Conversation.